Welcome everybody to our first mindful moment with Dr. Moise. I am here with our social emotional wellness consultant, Dr. Tequilla Hill, who happens to also be one of our wonderful board members with Sharper Moise Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Hill. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Moise. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. So, I really wanted to kind of go into, we are in the midst of the back to school season right now. And
Yeah.
so there's so much pressure on teachers, there's so much pressure on administrators and students and school districts to make sure that our students are safe. One, two, to make sure that, students kind of make up for the year that was last year of COVID, but we're still in the middle of COVID because it's not gone. It's not gone away yet, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So I really want to talk about how can teachers, administrators, parents, how can they deal with this pressure of bringing their students back to school, making sure that they're safe, and dealing with the pressures that come with going back to school in general? Because in my experience as an administrator, as a teacher, as an educator for about 14 years, the pressure of going back to school period is just like, okay, we're in a new back to school season, we got to make sure everything is correct. But now you have this added thing with COVID. How can our viewers make sure that their emotional wellness stays intact?
Yeah, I think the first rule of thumb is stay sane and stay safe. And by that, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of different pressures and there's a lot of noise out there, but ultimately, parents and administrators and staff and teachers, you have to make choices that are in alignment to your value system. And I understand that, unfortunately, during this time, the stuff with COVID and the vax and anti-vax and all these things and the masks have become political, and it's not about these babies and their safety anymore. So unfortunately, parents and administrators and teachers and staff have to kind of come together and figure out, what does safety look like? Like, how are we going to be in this together and support each other in community? I think that community is key. And I'm curious from your perspective, Dr. Moise, from a parent's perspective, like what rights do they have? Like who should they be calling or talking to in their district or in their community about what to expect or what to follow when the state may say one thing, but then the county may say another. So I'm curious as far as what you think about their safety and what rights they have.
Well, I think it really depends because a lot of the situation is so fluid. And I say that because I think I saw something in the news where a school district, they started off in person,
Mhm.
and they had to quarantine 50, 60%. When you have to do that, the problem becomes an operational issue, not and then a health issue, because if all of your teachers are out, who's going to teach the students, right? And then you have it on a normal, in a normal time, there's no substitutes, right? So where am I going to find a substitute to cover all of these teachers and things that are out? So I think that the situation is fluid, is going to remain fluid. And it's really up to a lot of the districts, unless you have like state mandates that are going on that says all school districts are supposed to have are supposed to have masks. Then you have other states that say no, they can't, districts can't mandate masks, and then the district goes against the state and saying, hey, you need to have masks. I think at this point in time, the best course of action is for families, parents to do what's best for themselves and their children, right? You can only protect yourself. Use scientific based information to make that decision of what's best for you and your family. Because if you're waiting for a mandate from the school district, if you're waiting for a mandate from the state, that may never come. and that may not be enough to protect you, your family, and your children. So I think that they need to make sure that they do what's best for themselves and do what's best for their families. Also, like I said, it just depends on the district and it just depends on the state as to mask mandate, no mask mandate. So that parent needs to make sure that they find out what their district is doing and then act accordingly. Of course, act accordingly as to what is best for you and your family.
Yeah, yeah. We're definitely, saying the same thing about kind of following what you value, what is important to you, and doing the best that you think is right for you and your family. I'm also curious, being, an administrator and running, your own school, what would you say would be key to keep the teachers and the staff safe? I'm seeing in my own practice with my clients, some of my teachers and administrators have to go in, but are still virtual. Some have to go in and they're seeing live. Some are having a blended format. I'm curious from your perspective about the teachers and the staff and administrators' rights and how can they stay safe and advocate and rally that they are taken care of because they are the ones in the front lines supporting these babies.
Definitely, I would say, they would have to protect themselves, mask up, follow those guidelines where, you're masking, whether you're vaccinated or not. Of course, taking the vaccine, again, that's a personal choice. Masking up whether you're vaccinated or not, making sure you keep that social distancing, making sure that you are constantly cleaning your classroom. Again, on a normal year without COVID, I used to have to make sure that my classroom was clean, like go through this deep clean with Lysol wipes and everything like that, because the students, seasonally, students would get sick. I would get sick with bronchitis or something like that every year. It never failed. And you have those periods of time within any school building where you would find that staff is calling out. Why is staff calling out? Because there's a bug going around. And so, you have to make sure that you protect yourself. If you're sick, stay home. Sometimes it's not possible, and I know people are afraid of losing their job or this is going to happen or that is going to happen. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you take care of yourself and you take care of your family, because if you don't, then you're not going to be there for that job that you're worried about losing. So, and I know a lot of people are in tough spots where they can't afford to lose their jobs. They can't afford to lose their health insurance. They can't afford to do all of those things. But I think about that they have to look at it on the flip side as well. If I do all of these things, I'm going in masks, I'm not social distancing, I'm not, taking care of myself and my body, and I'm stressed out, then you're not going to be here for that job. So it's very important to make sure that that you take care of yourself and that you kind of protect yourself again and do what's best for you and your family and do what's best for you and your household.
Yeah, and what I've come to see is a lot of I'm in Atlanta, so I've seen a lot of my clients who are teachers kind of come together, almost like their own like support system, and I love that because I think that we all need community of like-minded people, like an ecosystem of wellness, because it is a difficult time because of so many of the unknowns. And what I try to tap in with people is that to focus on what you can control and to be very intentional about what do you need to stay safe, and then what is it that you're trying to do. The objective is to have a productive, safe, and healthy school year. Then within your power, what can you do? And also with the parents, I also understand this is probably the first time a lot of parents have had to be more hands-on than usual, from the technology to just all the things. And what I say to that is also, if you can like connect with other parents, having your own support system, supporting each other with like assignments or like technology. I know everyone's not tech savvy, but I found that just connecting in community, even like, learning how to have better connections with the teachers and administrators, not from a place of like trying to give criticism, but like, how can I support my child's learning in this environment? Like what else can be done? Like, do you have any like online resources or either like ground resources I can use to help facilitate a learning environment that is still beneficial for our children? I understand in-house is best, everyone prefers that, but I know right now we don't have those options all the time. So stay sane, be intentional, create community, and also build connections with teachers, administrators, and staff. I think we're both kind of saying that right now is key, because we don't know what are the national or local laws are going to look like moving forward.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to note that, I think last year you saw a lot of that community of people coming together and people rallying together. And I know some educators, even within the midst of COVID, although the buildings were empty, there were no students in there. There were administrators that were required to be in those buildings and making sure that things were going correctly or things like that. So you did see a sense of community a little bit last year when everything hit off with COVID. Probably it's got a little bit lax now with with some people, but I think what you said of making sure that all of the all of the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, the administrators, make sure that they build a sense of community within themselves and to kind of support each other through these unprecedented times that we're in right now, because a lot of us have not been through the polio or all of those other diseases that broke out so long ago, and now we're living it. We only just read about it in textbooks, and now we're actually living it. So it's very important to make sure that we do continue to kind of support each other and build that sense of community. One thing I wanted to ask you, Dr. Hill, is how can, as parents, as teachers, as people that have our heart out for our students, how can, because we are always go, 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 go. When school starts, it's 24/7. People always say, well, it's good that you're an educator because you get the summers off, you get all of these holidays off.
They don't know.
I mean, you really, really don't. Because, I mean, summertime, school is out. You probably have 2 weeks of training afterwards. Then you get 2 weeks of training before you even come back to school officially. And sometimes I felt like I lived in the building, because it was like I get there at 6 and I'm leaving at 6, Monday through Friday, And so it's like, how do you talk to administrators and educators about unplugging, right? Because we find it, and I know for myself, I always found it hard to unplug because my email was on my phone. It was 10 o'clock at night. I'm rolling over, looking at email, or I'm sending an email out. And I always used to tell the staff, just because I am up at 1 o'clock in the morning sending the email out, because that's the only time that I have to myself to send this email out to you guys and not be bothered. And I used to always tell them, please do not feel the need to respond to my email at 1 o'clock in the morning. This is just the only time that I have to send it out. But then I started sending the automatic it out, that you can set up the time where it sends it out at a decent hour, so people don't see that I'm sending emails out at 1 o'clock in the morning. But what is your recommendation for unplugging and kind of having that balanced life? Because you can get burnt out real fast.
Yeah. So what's coming up for me is something I teach therapists against burnout is tune in and time out. I think is important now more than ever. And we probably all have been lax on this, but with COVID, the best thing we can do is stay physically well and mentally well. So when I think about tuning in is creating some type of self-care wellness routine, starting when you wake up in the morning, before you wake the kids up, or do it with the kids, figuring out like, what is my intentions for the day? I tell people pick 3 intentions. Like, what are my 3 intentions for the day? Focus on those 3 intentions, right? And then at the end of the day, download the day. That's your time out. So we tune in at the beginning of the day. We start the day with whatever practice you want to start. It can be a spiritual practice, nourishing yourself with some delicious coffee and some real food, getting the kids there. And then at the end of the day, shut it down, download the day, do something nourishing, recoup, recharge, so that you can be fresh for the beginning of the next day. Also, with COVID rampant, like COVID wants a weakened immune system. And when you're stressed out and you're not recharging yourself, you leave yourself open to a lot of things because you wear your immune system down. So just learning how to care for yourself and manage the stuff, nothing should be above all of our well-being. The to-do list can wait. You know, that it's not worth burnout. I always say we're gonna all work hard. Choose your hard. You can work hard and burn out, or you can work hard and be nourished within self, within family, and then community. That's a choice we all have. I know this is all uncomfortable right now, but we can manage the uncomfortability with learning just how to nourish ourselves better, asking for help, and also just unplugging.
Yeah, I used to, that was one of the things that I had to work hard on the most because like I said, it was always go, 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 go. There was always something, especially depending on which school level you were at, because high school always has something going on. 20 all year round, high school always has something going on. Elementary school, middle school, there's always outside activities that happen outside of hours, outside of the regular hours, the norm hours that people think that.
Yeah, I know the culture of burnout with administrators and educators and staff is wild, and that, like, unfortunately we have allowed things that are not good for us to be normal, and just because they're normal doesn't make them right. And I hope that people are taking their health more seriously and honoring their well-being and creating new boundaries and seeking out support, you know, support in community support, and you know, a provider like myself, just support, you know, church groups, whatever you need, but don't do it alone, you know, because see, burnout likes isolation, but wellness loves community. You know what I mean? So I hope that people know that they can expand their ecosystem of wellness personally, professionally, and in all the ways that keep them well.
Because one thing you said that triggered something for me. Your students notice, our kids notice when you're in burnout mode, when you are stressed out, and it kind of transfers on. So that's, like I said, one of the things that, you know, we as educators need to learn how to do is kind of unplug, rewind, unwind, because it transfers on to the work, because students or kids are so, they know. We
Yeah.
think that they don't know what's going on, but they know, they can feel it. They can tell when your mood is off. They
Mhm.
can tell, you know, when things aren't going correct. And so you want to make sure that you're at your best when you walk in the building. So like usually if something's going on in my personal life, I'm like, I've got to check this at the door because I can't transfer this on to these students that I have to come across with. And if I have to take that day off because I know that I don't have the capacity to check it at the door,
Yeah.
I take that day off,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I have to take
Emotional
that day off
energy
because you
is
can
infectious.
transfer that over.
Oh yeah, emotional energy is infectious. And I think, you know, all of us really need to be mindful of how we show up and what we're leaning into. Because if you're grounded and you're nourished and you're clear and intentional, that can only spill over to the kids, to our peers, to community, you know. Hence why I think it's important to have some type of mindful practice. You don't have to go deep into meditation. If you just take a moment to connect with your breath, and to just take a minute for stillness, you know, to move with the energy of calm and clarity versus burnout and reaction energy, you will find that you will struggle less and also be able to make decisions, really hard decisions, better and quicker if you can take a minute for clarity.
Yeah, that is so true. I totally agree with that. I've had to change my morning routine, my health routine, my wellness routine. And now if I'm like, I skip a day at the gym, it's like, you know, it throws everything off for me because I'm like, this is my place of peace where I call it my therapy sometimes when I go into the gym and, you know, do whatever it is that I'm doing. If I'm working with my trainer or if I'm running on a treadmill or doing what I need to do, that's my therapy time. And then I come out of there and I'm like, oh, okay.
Your body needs elevation, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. And like you said, when you have that weakened immune system, it doesn't help with what's going on in the times right now if we're so stressed out, and that all of that stuff affects our bodies and our mental health.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I'm just really hoping that something positive comes out of all of this. I really hope that we can continue to utilize technology in beneficial ways that serves all of us, not just some of us. As I'm curious from your perspective too, Dr. Moise, do you see technology staying as heavily incorporated into education as it is today? Or do you think it's going to be some type of hybrid when we kind of balance out from COVID? What do you think?
I think it's going to go towards being balanced, right? Because I think you have to think about how all learners learn different, right? Some people, this remote learning has been great for them. They're like, yes, put me behind a computer. I don't like doing group projects anyway. So I can do all of this work by myself.
Mhm.
But then others, of course, they thrive on that interaction with people. They thrive around being with other people. You have your kinesthetic learners that need to do that hands-on, and that the remote just isn't working for them. So I think that the future definitely of education is going to go more the more hybrid, because that hybrid is going to hit all of your different types of learners. I don't think that if we stay on this path of education like we've been doing the last 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years, we're doing a disservice to our kids, period. A disservice to our students, because everything is changing and everything is evolving. And so the way that we teach them needs to change and evolve. Not all students are going to learn by having to be in school from 8 to 5 or 8 to 3 or however long they're in that school building, right? Some of those students are going to be able to thrive on doing some remote learning, coming in, doing some of their hands-on activities, especially at our high school level. They're more independent than the elementary kids, because the elementary kids, yes, of course, it depends on the developmental level of the students.
Mhm.
But I think that there should be a little bit more flexibility, and COVID has shown that, because some people got it right. Some people got it right, that remote learning worked for them, and some people, like I said, remote, that hybrid type learning did not work for them. So I think this is an opportunity for us to rethink education and rethink the way that we teach our students, and rethink the way that education is structured. Because like I said, if we keep things as status quo and keep doing things the way that we have been doing things, we're doing our kids a disservice, especially our brown and our Black and brown students. We're doing them a disservice if we keep doing things the way that we've been doing, because obviously we see that it's not working.
Yeah. So what I think I hear you saying, Dr. Moise, is that all of us have to be a little flexible and be open to technology, and also be open to seeing what the individual learner needs, versus like waiting for things to go back to how it was, but kind of to embrace.
There is no
it.
going back. There is no going back. And I think a lot of people are afraid of change, and they are afraid of, what is going, and I hear people say this all of the time, oh, we need to go back to the way things used to be, going back to the way things were. There is no going back, because this totally has changed a lot of people, has changed the world. There is no going back to the way things used to be. And my fear is that, especially within education, that they're going to try and go back to the way that things used to be, right? So let's go back to that in-person learning, and let's go back to, math, science, social studies, and not evolve and let the things that unfortunately this past year and a half has showed us, that we can evolve education into something a little bit more different than what we've been doing. So people are afraid of change, but sometimes change is good, and it's good for the better.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate your optimism, your pragmatic optimism, Dr. Moises. I also echo that with the people that I serve, and that I understand that like we are all trying to acclimate to this new normal. Even for me as a mental health provider, like, learning how to get over myself. And, because I was taught traditionally how to do therapy, we weren't taught how to do therapy online. You could just figure that out, right? So I also think that this has brought mental health and the accessibility to people who probably wouldn't be able to see someone like me. It's brought a lot of good to people. And we all have to adjust that technology is going to be a part of our life in some way. And I agree, it's probably going to be more of a hybrid situation, but life is growth and life is change, and we all have to learn how to accept what is and what could be in the present moment.
Yeah, and like I said, for a lot of people, growth is uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Why can't we, in any setting, you see people, well, why can't we do it the way that we've always been doing it? We've been doing it like this for 15 years. We've been doing like this for 20 years, but things have changed in 15 years and 20 years. There's new technologies, there's new things out there, there's better way. Not saying that the old way, was necessarily bad, or some
Mhm.
of it is bad, but there's ways of evolving into doing things better, right?
Integrating, right? The best parts of the old and embracing the new and trying to figure out, what is the happy medium of what is becoming, because that's another way to not cause yourself undue stress or anxiety is holding on to realities that aren't going to manifest. Like the past is behind us. 2019 and 2020 are now behind us. And now we have to stay present in what is happening now.
2022 is just around the corner, and I'm just like, oh my God, what is going on? We're in mid-August right now. Like, what is going on? So whether you want to change or not, things are going to keep changing. The time is going to keep changing. Time is going to keep moving on. So you kind of either, hop on the train or not, or you're going to get left behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. I totally agree. But, hearing you speak, as an administrator and a leader, Dr. Moise, you've definitely given me so much like peace around just like being optimistic about what could happen. And also this idea of community is something really, really lovely that we can find peace in that we're in this together. And eventually we're gonna get it right. We're gonna get a balance. But it's very, very important for all of us to learn how to be on the same wavelength about, what is the goal here. The goal is to stay well, to make sure these children have high quality education, for our educators and our staff to be supported, and for them to be well. So that's something that we all have a part in. That's something that we all can show up in. So I do appreciate the things that you have said, because it's really given me peace in this moment. So thank you.
No, thank you. And in closing, I want you to leave everyone with 3 things
Mhm.
that they can start with to begin, I would say, balancing their life and alleviating some of that stress that they may be feeling, that stress or that anxiety
Mhm.
that have kicked up in people with these times. And definitely, like I said, going back to school. We're in the midst of back to school season. So a lot of people have already gone back. Some people are getting ready to go back in a couple of weeks. So what are 3 things that every single stakeholder can do? What can parents do?
Mhm.
What can our educators and staff members do? What can our students do? Because they're important, and I know we'll talk about them a little later.
Mhm.
But what can they do? 3 things that they can do to kind of help alleviate some of this stress and anxiety that they're feeling about this back to school season.
Yeah, I think the first thing everyone can do is identify support systems. That could be your natural support, your friends or family. That can be extended supports, administrators, teachers that they have been mentored by, or mental health professionals, spiritual guides. I think that's something that's first. Second of all, is to figure out too, what is your wellness routine? Like, what are you putting into your body? Are you elevating your body? Are you sleeping? Are you hydrating? So one is support, the second is the wellness, the physical wellness, and the third is the mindset. All things are experienced through the mind first. Your mindset is so important, because your mind tells your body what to do. So keeping like an optimistic mindset or a pragmatic mindset, being present is so important. And like, how do I want to show up every day? So staying present, be here right now, elevate the body, fuel up the body, rest the body, hydrate the body, and then get support. So those are my three things.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that you said mindset. Listen, we can be here talking about mindset for a long time, because that is where it all starts. And I'm going to close with this. So like having a positive mindset, a lot of people may think that everything is rosy, everything is great, everything, nothing can go wrong. And that truly isn't it. You're just knowing that if I have this positive mindset, that my outcome is going to be what I want it to be. I still have to work hard at it to get to my goal, to get to that end result. But I know in my mind that nothing is going to stop me from getting to that end goal. And if you keep that in the back of your mind, in the front of your mind, and you have that positive mindset moving forward, that nothing's going to stop me from accomplishing this goal, then guess what? Nothing's going to stop you from accomplishing that goal. Right. So I am so glad that you mentioned mindset, because that's definitely one of the things that we're going to get into a little bit later, because it is very important. That is number one.
And let me just say, Dr. Moise, too, just to add to that, at the beginning of COVID, I had a conversation with myself and a conversation with Creator, and I chose to survive and figure it out and thrive in COVID, even though this is like last March and we didn't know what the heck was going on. I made a conscious choice to stay positive and to keep moving forward. I didn't know what forward was. All I knew is that I'm going to try to live through this as honestly and as healthily as I could. So when I made that choice, it actually changed my life, in that I didn't have to shut my practice down. I just went virtual. I was able to connect with people like you, Dr. Moise. I was able to connect with other, thought leaders and people who are also in the same positive energy that brought us here today. So there's something very, very powerful about that, the mindset, bringing that mindset to the forefront. So thank you for highlighting that.
Yes, no, thank you for bringing that up to everyone. So definitely want to thank you for your time today, Dr. Hill. Definitely will be having you back.
Please do.
So we can kind of discuss some other topics, definitely surrounding wellness, mental health, because that's something that we very much take, that's important to us here with Sharper Moise. And so definitely want to welcome you back and have you back, so that we can kind of continue this discussion around the overall wellness of our community.
Absolutely. I'd be honored to come back. Thank you so much, Dr. Moise. And thank you for all that you do in the community and nationally, and all the ways that you show up and spread your love and your gifts to the world.
All right. Thank you so much. See you next time.